Imagine you're standing in the middle of an argument. Your heart is racing, and in your mind, every word is being sharpened like a blade. You wait for the moment the other person slips, so you can deliver the finishing line. But strangely, at the very moment you prepare your strongest counter-strike, you've already tied yourself to their leash. If Nietzsche were standing beside you, he wouldn't stop you, and he wouldn't teach you how to respond. He would only look straight at you and whisper something chilling. You've already lost. You didn't lose because your logic was weaker, but because you stepped onto a battlefield where the rule is reaction. In that place, the more you speak, the faster you reveal your weak points. To Nietzsche, arguments are rarely a search for truth. More often, they're a war of ego, of status, of hunger for recognition. When you get pulled into that spiral, you're no longer steering the conversation. You're being steered. In today's video, you'll see why a well-timed pause can make the other person expose their hand, lose their rhythm, and defeat themselves while you barely need to attack. Don't leave yet, because at the end of this part, there's a tiny sign that will tell you who's holding the chain of your emotions, and you'll be shocked by how often it happens. Number 1. Why do people argue? People often say they argue because they want to clarify the truth. They like to dress an argument in clean white clothing like that, because it makes them feel they have a legitimate reason. But if you look closely at the moment anger rises, you'll see what happens isn't a hunt for truth. What happens is an emergency rescue mission for the ego. Nietzsche looks at arguments the way you'd look at a psychological magic trick. On the surface, it's reasoning, but underneath, it's the survival instinct of identity. Try to remember a time someone told you, "You're wrong." If that sentence lands on something unimportant, you might laugh, nod, and change your mind fairly easily. But if it hits a belief you've used to build your self-image, your body reacts before your mind does. Your body heats up, and your chest pounds faster than usual. Your brain starts searching for ammo to fire back. Neuroscience calls this a threat response, because the brain receives rejection as a form of social danger. But Nietzsche would go further. He says people don't just fear being wrong. People fear losing the right to define who they are. When you attach your identity to an opinion, admitting you're wrong is no longer just changing a view. It's like tearing down your whole house with your own hands. That's why people cling to opinions the way they cling to a spine. Someone who sees themselves as a moral person won't debate the right or wrong of an action. They will fight to protect the idea that they belong to the good side. Someone who sees themselves as an intelligent person won't exchange ideas to learn more. They will fight to prove they cannot lose a conversation. When the ego is threatened, honor becomes everything. That's when you witness something strange. The more cornered people become, the more certain they are that they're right. This isn't the strength of reason. It's the reflex of a wounded identity. Nietzsche calls it the fragility of someone who needs other people's eyes to exist. People live in a state of needing to be affirmed, and arguing is how they reclaim the feeling of being real. From here, arguing slides into the second layer, the game of domination. Watch closely. Many debates don't end with, "I understand," but with, "Fine, don't talk anymore," or "whatever." Those sentences are either a flag of surrender or a flag of victory. Inside, people are measuring. Who has more arguments? Who forces the other to explain themselves? Who gets the final word? This is when discussion turns into an arena, and each strike doesn't aim at an idea, but at the other person's position in an invisible order of power. You can see this game in families, in love, at work, and across social media. A couple argues about, "Why are you home late?" But in truth, they're fighting over something deeper. Who is prioritized? Who gets to set boundaries? A friend offers blunt feedback, but in truth, they're testing whether they have the right to stand above you. Someone leaves a harsh comment under your post, but in truth, they're declaring, "I can make you uncomfortable." The philosopher Hobbes spoke of life as a constant competition for power, but Nietzsche is colder. He says people don't just want to live. People want to feel that they are expanding their influence. Then, arguing reaches the third layer, the most subtle and most common, the herd's hunger for recognition. Human beings are social creatures, and that makes them addicted to feedback. Nietzsche calls this herd morality, where people don't live by inner truth, but by applause. People take a side in an argument not because that side is right, but because it gives them an identity, because it gives them the feeling of belonging. Nietzsche doesn't care how well you speak. Nietzsche cares about who is controlling your heartbeat. Because the moment you heat up, you hand the steering wheel to someone else. You become a puppet of an emotional button. This is the point that makes you wake up. Arguing isn't dangerous because it's loud. Arguing is dangerous because it allows someone else to hold your remote control. Nietzsche calls it a refined kind of slavery. And when you understand why people argue, you begin to see something bigger. An argument doesn't reveal the truth of the topic. It reveals the truth of the person. It reveals what they lack, what they fear, what they crave. And if you look deep enough, you'll realize a chilling secret. The one who argues the most is often not the strongest one, but the one most desperate to prove that they exist. Right now, I want you to be honest with me for a moment. Have you ever thrown yourself into an argument just because one sentence hit your pride, then later sat alone and wondered, "Why am I so easily affected?" If you have, that's okay, because most of us have been controlled by others without realizing it. If you can, leave a short comment. "I've been pulled." Just writing that down means you've started taking back the wheel, because the moment you name your mechanism correctly, it no longer gets to hide in the dark and pull your strings. And if you want to go deeper, where Nietzsche shows you how to reclaim power from your own reflexes, stay with me, because the next part is where Nietzsche's will to power begins to unlock. Number 2, will to power and the backbone of the one who doesn't react. If you hear the phrase will to power and immediately picture dictators, oppressors, or some dark ambition, you've fallen into the very trap Nietzsche often mocked. People only see power on the surface, where it is loud and crude. But to Nietzsche, real power is not, first of all, the desire to dominate others. It is the capacity to master the chaos inside yourself, and only then touch the outside world without being dragged behind it. Nietzsche sees life as a current of forces, like underground waters, constantly trying to break through the ground. Each person is a cluster of forces wanting to expand, wanting to surpass limits, wanting to become larger than yesterday's self. When you have will to power, you stop asking, "What do people think of me?" like someone begging for a permit to exist. You start asking, "Who am I becoming?" like someone forging their own shape. Power for Nietzsche is the drive of creation, of self-overcoming, of daring to define values instead of borrowing them. That's why will to power can appear in an artist who dares to break the mold, in an ordinary person who dares to change their life, in someone who once felt weak but refuses to let fear take the wheel ever again. And this is where the backbone of the one who doesn't react enters, like a silent power that is frightening, because reaction is the cheapest thing in spiritual life. A dog gets kicked and it barks. A person gets poked in the pride and they argue. An ego gets threatened and it erupts. But not reacting is not swallowing humiliation, and it's not running from conflict. Not reacting is the act of someone self-possessed, someone who sees the hook and doesn't lift their chin into it. Not reacting is how you declare, "My emotions are no longer a weakness for others to press." You might ask, how can silence be related to power? Because reaction is always an admission of the other person's power over you. When someone says one sentence and you instantly ignite, you show them they have the key to open your inner door. You hand them control over your heartbeat, your breathing, your thinking. Nietzsche would call this a refined form of humiliation. You are living by signals from the outside, rather than by will from the inside. Power is not about having no emotions. Power is about not letting emotions lead you the way you would lead a child. Epictetus emphasized that people don't suffer because of events, but because of how they interpret events. Nietzsche is not stoic in the sense that he doesn't want you merely to endure life. He wants you to master life by turning it into material for growth. But the two meet at one cold point. The only thing you truly own is your response. When you master your response, you master yourself. And when you master yourself, you begin to have real power, because you are no longer easily bought by praise and no longer easily controlled by contempt. The backbone of the one who doesn't react has 3 layers, and each layer is like a deeper door leading inward. The first layer is awareness. This person notices the impulse to react the moment it appears. They feel the heat rising in the body, see the ego standing up, sense the instinct to hit back surging. But they treat it only as a signal. The second layer is the power to choose the rhythm. In a tense conversation, the other person wants you to answer immediately, so you'll say something wrong and reveal yourself. The one who doesn't react doesn't give them that gift. They let a pause appear, and that darkness makes others uneasy. Have you ever seen someone get cornered with a hard question, stay silent for a few seconds, and then say one short line that makes the whole room go quiet? Nietzsche would call that the sign of someone with inner force. The third layer is the ability to transform. This is will to power in its deepest sense. This person uses the pause to turn the situation into an inner advantage. They ask themselves, which wound is this activating in me? Why do I need to prove myself? What am I afraid of? And when they name the fear loses power. When they look straight at the thrashing ego, the ego loses the ability to pull strings. That is a kind of victory no one else can see, yet it decides who you will be 10 years from now. Nietzsche says human beings are higher than animals, not because they are more polite, but because they can be more self-governing. Freedom, for Nietzsche, is not doing whatever you want. It is not being dragged by low reflexes. When you don't react, you refuse a small battle to save energy for a larger one. The battle of becoming a stronger version of yourself. And here is a technique for turning that foundation into an advantage in the very moment of confrontation. The instant emotion gets touched. Nietzsche offers a move that is razor-thin and razor-sharp. The silent trick, the pause that seems small, yet is enough to switch your role from the one being pulled to the one holding the rhythm. Number 3, the silent trick that gives you power. Nietzsche's silent trick isn't a social tactic to make you look composed. It's a sharp turn in the psychology of power. Instead of rushing to respond by reflex, you create a pause long enough to switch roles. That pause is very small, sometimes only a few seconds, but it carries the weight of a door slamming shut between you and outside control. People speak the most when they're uneasy, and they speak the fastest when they feel they can't control the person in front of them. In a confrontation, words don't only carry information, they're a tool for grabbing the handle. When you don't answer right away, you don't give them a foothold to keep fighting at the rhythm they want. You suddenly pull the chair out of a tug of war. The other person has to rebalance by talking more, explaining more, emphasizing more. And while they scramble to fill the gap, they end up revealing what they truly want. Some people want you to apologize, not to solve the problem. Some people want you to validate them, not the truth. Some people want to confuse you, not to talk things through. A well-timed silence is like turning off the lights in a room and watching who panics first. You can see this effect in real life. In a salary negotiation, many people fall into the trap the moment a recruiter says, "Our budget is limited," and they immediately lower their expected salary. But someone who has a pause will stay silent for a few seconds, then ask one question about the criteria for that pay range. The silence before that question forces the other side to reveal themselves. Do they truly lack budget, or are they testing whether you're afraid of losing the opportunity? Nietzsche would call this the strength of the unhurried, because the hurried are easy to lure. Just like a fish doesn't die because the bait is good, it dies because it snaps by reflex. Next, the silent trick creates a power vacuum. When you fall silent at the right moment, you create a space that forces the other person to face themselves. They don't know what you're thinking. They don't know whether they've affected you. They don't know whether you're about to counterattack or walk away. That uncertainty makes them lose their footing because their power often depends on getting you to read their signals. Silence cuts that signal line. The philosopher Kierkegaard spoke of anxiety as the state that appears when a person stands before countless possibilities and doesn't know what to choose. Your silence creates a similar kind of anxiety in the other person. They begin to ask themselves, did I say something wrong? Does this person look down on me? And the moment they start asking those questions is the moment the initiative changes hands. The third step, and the deepest layer, is this: silence as an unspoken declaration. You can't control me. At this level, silence is no longer just a tactic in conversation. It becomes a way of living. You refuse to become a product of external stimuli. You refuse to let praise make you blindly euphoric and criticism make you collapse instantly. Nietzsche would call this the first step of self-overcoming, because you are separating yourself from emotional slavery. When someone knows how not to be pulled into reaction, they become harder to grasp. And being hard to grasp is a kind of power, because power always belongs to the one who is not easily predictable. You'll notice that people with real presence in a room share one thing. They don't need to grab the microphone. They carry a calm ease, as if they're not rushing to compete for anything. That ease isn't innate. It's the result of self-mastery. When provoked, They don't rush to snap back and be done with it. When doubted, they don't rush to explain themselves enough. They do one thing. They keep their self-control. And precisely because they are self-controlled, others begin to be drawn toward them. This is the paradox of power. Those who try to control often expose insecurity, while those who control themselves create a sense of safety and authority. You need to understand that silence here is not freezing. When you don't speak, you're saying something deeper with your whole posture. I only open my mouth when it's worth it. And the goal here isn't to win an argument, it's to protect your inner sovereignty. If you lose that, you could win 100 debates and still be winning inside a cage someone else built. You can try a small experiment as soon as you get to this point. Next time someone throws a pride-hooking line at you, don't answer with the sentence you've already prepared in your head. Pause for a beat and look at them the way you'd look at someone revealing something about themselves. Let the space appear. Feel the urge to react, but don't become its slave. If you can do that, you'll see something strange. The game changes rhythm, and the other person begins to work just to keep it going. That's when you understand why Nietzsche sees self-mastery as the highest form of power. Because when you have a pause, you don't only hold your silence, you hold yourself. Thank you for coming this far with me, because if you're still here, it means you've already made it past the halfway point of this video without giving up on the deepest layers of psychology and power. And believe me, the next part is the most valuable part, because we won't only talk about silence as a technique, we'll touch a very fragile boundary, when silence is backbone, when silence is escape, and how to use it at the right time so your life gets pulled less by cheap battles. If you want to keep digging into philosophy that you can actually use in real life, please like and subscribe so we can meet again in the next videos. Number 4. 2 quiet winners. If you want to see the silent trick with real eyes, you don't need to search through thick philosophy books. You only need to look at 3 kinds of people who have moved through life like they were walking through a noisy room, yet could still make the whole room fall silent when they needed to. Their common point isn't that they speak less to seem mysterious. Their common point is that they understand a rule that haunted Nietzsche. Real power isn't in noise. Real power is the ability to shape how others think and act without exhausting yourself in cheap contests. But before you look up to symbols like philosophers or swordsmen, you can look right around you, because the silent trick doesn't belong only to legendary names. A mother in a family, with an argument about to explode, doesn't shout. She stays silent and then says one clear sentence that restores order. An employee being attacked in a meeting doesn't rush to defend themselves. They let the other person finish, then present their point clearly. A friend being baited into an online ego fight sees the trap, turns off the screen, goes to sleep, and the next morning keeps doing their work, letting results answer instead of arguments. Those people pause because they understand. Their energy should be saved for something more valuable, and that restraint creates a kind of force that's hard to name. People can't control them, so they have to respect them. The first figure is Socrates, who turned silence into a form of intelligent power, silence by not imposing, only questioning. In Plato's Apology, Socrates says he was dragged to court for being accused of corrupting the youth and being impious. But what bothered Athens was that he made those who claimed to know stand naked before the truth that they did not know. He went to politicians, poets, craftsmen, people praised by the crowd as wise, and he kept asking until their answers began to contradict themselves, and then silence appeared, like a verdict. The other person could hear their own collapse in their head, and they hated Socrates. This is power, in Nietzsche's sense. No need to beg the herd for recognition, only the stripping away of illusions the herd clings to. The second figure is Miyamoto Musashi, who turned silence into psychological pressure on the battlefield. Musashi's most famous duel was his sword fight with Sasaki Kojiro on Ganryujima Island in 1612. Many accounts say Musashi arrived deliberately late, stepping calmly off the boat while Kojiro had been waiting, furious and insulted. Musashi even carried a long wooden sword he carved from an oar on the way to the island, as if he was speaking a silent sentence. "I don't need to honor ritual to defeat you." That lateness wasn't just lateness. It was a needle pricking the opponent's pride to pull him out of clarity. When Kojiro grew angry, he pushed himself into the state Nietzsche would call being controlled. Fast reaction, lost rhythm, emotion-led strikes. Musashi almost didn't need to say anything to hit Kojiro first. He hit Kojiro with silence and timing, and only then with the sword. These stories aren't just anecdotes to admire. These three stories are three blades cutting straight through the common illusion that power lies in words. All three meet Nietzsche at one red thread. The one who controls the rhythm doesn't need to be loud, because that person has already mastered what the crowd loses first when provoked: mastery of themselves. When you see the strength of silence, it's easy to mistake it for silence is always strength, and to believe that retreating from every clash is wisdom. In truth, silence is power only when it comes from self-mastery. When it comes from fear, it's just disappearance in disguise. And to keep the silent trick from becoming an excuse for cowardice, you need a higher principle. Real power is knowing when to be silent and when to speak. Number 5. Real power is knowing when to be silent and when to speak. Silence carries a dangerous misunderstanding. Many people hear, "Don't react," and then use silence like a bunker, hiding from conflict, hiding from responsibility. But Nietzsche doesn't teach you to disappear. Nietzsche despises most of all that kind of gentle morality that exists only to feel safe. He didn't build his philosophy to turn you into a shadow that endures. He built it to make you a self-governing individual who knows when to speak and when to remain silent. To Nietzsche, conflict is not something to avoid at all costs. The real issue is the role you enter it with: a person who is provoked or a person who actively shapes reality. That's why you must distinguish between the two kinds of argument, because they look similar on the outside but are opposites in essence. The first kind is arguing for the ego. It begins with a small touch to pride and spreads into a fire. You speak to prove you didn't lose. You speak to reclaim the feeling that you matter. You speak to retaliate. And the more you speak, the more you curl inward inside the cage of saving face or losing face. You're like a bird fighting inside a cage. The more you flap, the more feathers you lose, yet you still believe you're fighting for freedom. The second kind is arguing to create reality. This kind does not come from pride, it comes from will. You speak not to win with your mouth, but to clarify what matters, to set boundaries, to create a decision, an action, a change. In this kind of argument, you don't need many words. You only need to hit the core. Nietzsche sees this as the mature expression of will to power, less surplus emotion, more intention, and results that live in reality rather than in applause. You can see this difference very clearly if you watch how people with inner strength handle conflict in real life. A good manager doesn't argue with an employee in front of a crowd just to save face. That person chooses a private conversation, speaks briefly and clearly, and sets standards for action. A mature person in love also doesn't drag a relationship into the loop of "I'm right, you're wrong" until midnight. That person asks directly, which direction do we want this relationship to go, and what are each person's boundaries? See it now? The same tense conversation, but one side is a stage for pride, and the other side is a design table for the future. So when should you speak? You should speak when your words clarify an important truth, one that, if left unsaid, will cost you in the long run. You should speak when the conversation has the potential to transform, when the other person is still able to understand, adjust, and move toward a conclusion. You should speak when it shapes your future, because silence in those moments is no longer a strategy. It becomes self-betrayal. A very everyday example is boundaries. If you don't speak your boundaries, others will break them. If you don't speak your principles, the world will write principles for you. Nietzsche doesn't want you to become someone who knows everything but doesn't dare to speak. He wants you strong enough to set the rules of your own game. You should also speak when you are establishing standards and values. There are times when silence is not composure, but complicity. When a group is sliding into falsehood, when a decision is pulling you in the wrong direction, when an injustice happens right in front of you, speaking up can be an act of shaping reality. And when should you be silent? You should be silent when the other person has no intention of understanding. There are conversations where, from the beginning, the other person does not come to seek truth or solutions. They come to humiliate you, to drag you down, to extract your emotions. If you speak in that situation, you are paying for a game you can never win, because that game has no fair rules. You should also be silent when you're being pulled into insults, petty wins and losses, and wounded pride. In that space, content no longer matters. Only psychological strikes remain. The other person doesn't want you to understand. They want you to lose control. Silence here is not enduring. Silence here is pulling the power cord out of the trap. You don't extinguish them. You extinguish the mechanism that gives them the right to manipulate you. And the clearest sign that you're being pulled into the trap is the feeling that you must respond. When you notice that, you'll see something chilling. Many of the sentences you're about to say aren't coming from strength, but from fear of being looked down on. Nietzsche wants you to step out of that fear. He wants you to reach a state where your speech is a choice, not a reflex. Your silence is power, not disappearance. And when your voice does appear, it should be like a cut, clean, accurate, opening the way for action. You don't need to live as someone who is always silent. You need to live as someone who speaks only when your words create real value, and stay silent only when silence protects your self-mastery from cheap, petty battles. Number 6. The eternal recurrence test to cut meaningless arguments. Nietzsche has a test that makes every trivial argument suddenly feel embarrassing. It's a philosophical hammer that strikes straight at how you are using your life. Nietzsche calls it eternal recurrence. Imagine that the moment you are living right now will repeat infinitely, exactly as it is, every detail, every emotion, every sentence, every failure, every happiness, every suffering. You will have to live it again and again, forever. And a ruthless question appears. Do you want to relive this argument infinitely? If the answer makes you shiver, it means you are spending your life like loose change, wasting it on things that aren't worth it. This test is cruel, but it is cruel in a way that saves you, because it cuts through a dangerous illusion, the illusion that arguing is only a few minutes of irritation. In reality, arguing is how you carve your shape into time. Every time you throw yourself into a meaningless contest, you are rehearsing the person you will become. You are teaching your body how to react when pride is touched. You are teaching your mind what to choose, calmness or combustion. If that moment repeats infinitely, then what will your life become? A film loop, where the main character keeps repeating the same reflex, the same weakness, the same need to prove. Nietzsche offers eternal recurrence, not to frighten you, but to wake you up. Life is not measured by years, but by the quality of the moments you would willingly live again. You might think eternal recurrence is only an abstract idea, but Nietzsche deliberately makes it an inverted moral test. Instead of asking, is this right or wrong, he asks, would you dare to sign your name on this moment as a work of your life? This is the difference between herd morality and the morality of the one who creates their own values. Herd morality asks how you must behave to avoid being criticized. Nietzsche asks who you want to become, even when no one is watching. And when you bring that question into an argument, many fights die on the spot, because you suddenly see how small and how sad they are. Place yourself in a very ordinary scene. You're driving, someone cuts you off, and you instantly boil. Part of you wants to honk, to curse, to chase them down and teach them a lesson. Usually that moment passes quickly, and you forget it. But Nietzsche's test doesn't let you forget. It pulls you out of the heat and forces you to see the larger picture. If this moment repeats infinitely, do you want to live like someone who keeps getting dragged around like a puppet? Do you want your whole life to be shaped by moments where someone presses a button and you ignite? This question doesn't teach you to endure. It teaches you to respect your life. You'll see how powerful eternal recurrence is in the way it turns every action into an oath. If you're arguing with your lover just because they replied late to a message, the test rips off the mask. You're building a model of love based on control and insecurity. If that moment repeats infinitely, your love turns into a prison. If you're arguing with a colleague just because of one piece of feedback, the test rips off the mask. You're not only protecting your work, you're protecting the image. I can't be criticized. If that moment repeats infinitely, you will live like someone constantly guarding honor, constantly on alert. The mystery of eternal recurrence is that it doesn't tell you to be moral by following a list of rules. It forces you to look straight at the real value of time. Here, you can connect it to a perspective close to Nietzsche, but with a different voice. Buddhism speaks of samsara as the result of ignorance and clinging. When the mind keeps gripping craving, anger, and delusion, suffering keeps repeating. Nietzsche doesn't say, let go to escape suffering in a religious sense. Nietzsche says, love your fate and live in such a way that you can say, yes, let it all repeat, without trembling. That's why Nietzsche's test is extremely practical if you know how to use it. The moment you feel yourself about to throw yourself into an argument, you ask one simple but violent question. If I had to relive this exact scene infinitely, do I want to say the next sentence? That question does two things at once. It pulls you out of reflex rhythm and places you into choice rhythm. It also separates the real objective from the heat. You'll see clearly, some arguments are worth having because they shape your life, and some fights are just emotional trash looking for a place to be dumped. Nietzsche doesn't teach you to disappear, but Nietzsche teaches you not to live like someone who spends life dumping trash. This test also exposes a truth few dare to face. Many people enjoy arguing because it makes them feel intensely alive. But Nietzsche wants you to distinguish between intense and higher. A storm is intense too, but it only destroys. Someone with inner power can also be intense, but their intensity creates something, a decision, a work, a boundary, a future. Eternal recurrence is the ruler that tells you what kind of heat you have. If you don't want to relive it, that isn't intensity. That is waste, wearing a disguise. And here is the final illumination of this part. When you apply eternal recurrence, you don't only cut meaningless arguments, you train yourself into a person with standards for living. You are telling yourself, I accept no moment if I cannot take responsibility for it. That is a kind of power no one can take from you, because it doesn't depend on other people's approval. It depends on whether you dare to look at your life as a work of art and refuse to paint it with trivial strokes. When you begin living with the question, would I dare to relive this moment infinitely? Many arguments will disappear on their own, not because you are weak, but because you are strong enough not to be cheap with yourself. In the end, the most frightening thing isn't losing an argument, but losing the right to choose who you want to become in that moment. There will be days when you realize this. What you call defending your viewpoint is sometimes only a habit of self-defense, an instinct to be recognized, a thirst to win so you can feel you have value. And the moment you see it, you've already begun stepping out of the trap. Nietzsche doesn't promise you a smooth life. He gives you only a cold standard. Live in a way that you won't be ashamed when you look back at yourself. A small pause, a deep breath, a decision not to rush into petty wins and losses. These can be the beginning of a different life, where you're no longer dragged around by trivial things. If a sentence today touched something in you, keep it like a needle in your pocket. The next time emotion rises, you only need to touch that needle to remember. You don't need to defeat other people. You need to defeat the softness in yourself. And if you want to keep going deeper into the invisible mechanisms that control human beings, stay with our channel.